Seth Rollins has always been a chess piece. WWE moves with precision. Since his debut as part of The Shield, Rollins has evolved through multiple identities, from architect to kingslayer to visionary, with each phase hinting at something bigger looming in the background. What has begun to materialize since WrestleMania 41, however, is not just another chapter in his already historic career. It's the beginning of a movement designed to recalibrate WWE's entire power structure, an operation so intricate that only Rollins could be trusted to carry it out. WWE's current trajectory suggests that Seth is no longer just a main event talent, but a cornerstone in a broader plan that will reach into the company's deepest roots and stretch across both kayfabe and corporate ambitions. The betrayal of Roman Reigns by Paul Heyman at WrestleMania wasn't a simple swerve. It was a trigger point. It was symbolic of WWE taking its most trusted advisor and aligning him with someone who represents the future of the company's cultural and creative evolution. Rollins is not a placeholder or transitional figure. He's the vessel through which WWE can pivot away from the Reigns-centric tribal chief era and into something even more layered and expansive. That pivot becomes more potent when you introduce someone like The Rock into the equation. What WWE is teasing isn't just a stable, it's a movement. It's a narrative so global in scope that the implications stretch from weekly television to Hollywood to boardrooms. The idea of aligning Seth Rollins with The Rock may seem unlikely on the surface, given their respective alignments and generational divides, but WWE thrives on tension, transformation, and synergy. The Rock has returned not as a one-off megastar cameo, but as a deeply embedded player in WWE's creative framework. He represents Hollywood clout, boardroom legitimacy, and generational mythology. Aligning that with Rollins, a performer who embodies innovation, counterculture, and wrestling excellence, gives WWE a hybrid force capable of blurring the lines between fiction and reality. Rollins becomes more than a character. He becomes the spokesperson of a faction that could merge power, influence, and credibility. This potential faction would not be built on the traditional idea of heels gathering for domination. It would be a calculated alliance grounded in ideology. The Rock brings the legacy, the business ties, the international fame. Rollins brings in-ring excellence, unpredictability, and fan investment. With Paul Heyman acting as the philosophical glue, this group becomes something akin to WWE's answer to a political party, not just aiming to dominate storylines, but to reframe what power looks like in the company. If Reigns ruled with tribal loyalty and authoritarian force, Rollins and Rock would rule with cultural resonance and calculated disruption. The seeds of this are already being planted. Heyman's betrayal of Roman wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. It indicated that Heyman saw Rollins as someone capable of leading WWE into its next era, especially as the TKO merger continues to impact the creative and operational structure of the company. Aligning with The Rock only intensifies that direction. The Rock's partial ownership role and high-profile presence offer narrative legitimacy. Rollins gives it substance in the ring. Together, they can become the bridge between legacy fans and a new generation raised on anti-heroes, blurred realities, and high-octane chaos. This faction could also be WWE's way of streamlining its corporate ambition with its on-screen universe. As WWE eyes global expansion, premium partnerships, and increased synergy with media giants, having a faction that features Rollins and The Rock at its core allows for maximum crossover appeal. Imagine the optics. The Rock making corporate decisions while Rollins enforces them in the ring, Heyman guiding messaging like a propaganda minister, and future stars like Braun Breaker, or even someone like Austin Theory being cultivated under this new regime. WWE can manufacture loyalty and rebellion in one package. It's storytelling as strategy, business as narrative. What makes Rollins the perfect centerpiece is his adaptability. Unlike Reigns, who is bound by the rigidity of the tribal chief identity, Rollins is liquid. He flows into whatever shape the moment demands. He can be vicious and magnetic, delusional and inspiring. That unpredictability makes him harder to combat, both as a character and as a brand representative. WWE is no longer only in the business of booking matches. It's in the business of curating perception. Aligning Rollins with The Rock turns that into a meta-narrative, where kayfabe loyalty becomes a metaphor for audience investment. It also sets the stage for a Civil War storyline that doesn't just center around title belts, but around competing visions of what WWE should be. One of the most compelling aspects of this vision is the way it can manipulate loyalty. WWE has always thrived when allegiances are tested and ideologies clash. The Rock is one of the most universally loved figures in the company's history. Rollins has clawed his way into a similarly unique space, admired by hardcore fans for his in-ring work and revered by casual audiences for his spectacle. Bringing them together creates a gravitational pull that few other talents can rival. And unlike past factions built for chaos or dominance, this one would have purpose, hierarchy, and foresight. In that sense, WWE isn't just creating a faction, it's designing a political campaign. Rollins and Rock can be marketed as the face and voice of a new era that rewards cunning, creativity, and legacy. Think of it as the anti-bloodline. Where Roman's empire was built on blood and respect, this new structure is built on intellect and evolution. Where the bloodline feared collapse from internal dissent, this new faction thrives on internal recalibration. It's less a family and more a think tank. And Rollins, as its loudest, flashiest, and most dangerous disciple, becomes both the enforcer and the evangelist. The most significant benefit of this plan is its shelf life. Unlike other factions that burn hot and fade, this concept has the potential for long-term sustainability, because its mission isn't just gold or dominance, but transformation. Its arcs can constantly evolve. Rollins could lead invasions across brands, dismantle legacies, build new icons. The Rock could shift in and out based on availability, but leave enough narrative residue that his influence is never in doubt. Heyman could act as the voice behind the curtain, a scheming mind always one step ahead. And as younger stars orbit this nucleus, WWE builds not just matches, but movements. Moreover, this faction could become WWE's answer to the industry's growing appetite for reality-based storytelling. Rollins and Rock could blur real-life business updates, TKO decisions, media rights, brand alignments. With on-screen dominance, it wouldn't just be about feuds, it would be about ideology. They could campaign against nostalgia booking while benefiting from legacy power. They could denounce old power structures while inheriting them. They could simultaneously critique and capitalize on the very system they are conquering. It would be peak metas WWE, a spectacle so layered that even the critics would be unsure where to point their fingers. Rollins being given this mantle also reshapes WWE's creative hierarchy. He's no longer just competing with stars like Cody Rhodes, Gunther, or CM Punk. He's being positioned above them, not just as a wrestler, but as a pillar of vision. Punk represents rebellion, Cody represents legacy, but Rollins, under this new alignment, represents the machine's next evolution. He becomes the man through whom the company can rewrite its own rules while pretending to break them. And with The Rock beside him, those rules become gospel. What's also genius about this plan is the ambiguity it allows. Rollins doesn't need to turn heel in the traditional sense. Neither does The Rock. This faction could exist in a moral gray area where everything depends on perspective. Are they heroes dismantling a corrupt system, or tyrants cloaked in charisma and suits? WWE thrives in that space, and few can dance along that line better than Rollins and The Rock. It allows every feud to take on Shakespearean weight, with betrayals, power plays, and philosophical differences taking center stage. The reach of this storyline doesn't need to stop at Raw or SmackDown. With WWE's ever-expanding relationship with outside media, Netflix, Peacock, film studios, this faction can cross into documentaries, series, or even spin-off narratives. The Rock's Hollywood connections paired with Rollins' growing cultural clout create a template for global domination that mirrors their kayfabe aspirations. This isn't just a wrestling story, it's a media empire storyline in real time. WWE wants to be Marvel and UFC and HBO and TikTok all at once. Rollins and Rock are the closest thing to avatars that Dream has. Even more compelling is what happens when this plan reaches its apex, because eventually Rollins will have to confront The Rock. That confrontation doesn't have to be hostile, but it has to happen. All alliances, especially powerful ones, eventually buckle under ambition. Rollins, as the student surpassing the master, is an endgame that writes itself. That confrontation, not with malice, but with inevitability, could be WWE's next WrestleMania main event. Not a battle over championships, but over philosophy, over control, over what WWE will look like not in 5 months, but in 5 years. If the alliance between Seth Rollins and The Rock is the nucleus of WWE's next evolution, then the true magnitude of the faction's power lies in its supporting cast. This isn't about simply grouping superstars for the sake of stables. This is about constructing a syndicate, a multi-brand power structure that extends its reach from Raw's main event to NXT's performance centers. WWE's plan is to use this faction not only to fuel weekly programming, but to completely re-engineer how stars are introduced, elevated, and utilized. The group's members will function more like chess pieces, each placed strategically across WWE's ecosystem to disrupt the status quo. The obvious first candidate to serve under Rollins and The Rock is Braun Breaker. He represents the bridge between NXT's physicality and the main roster's storytelling. Breaker isn't a project anymore, he's an inevitability. Aligning him with Rollins instantly gives him narrative depth he's never had. Rather than positioning him as a generic powerhouse, WWE can now mold him into a soldier who adopts the creed of controlled chaos. Breaker's athleticism and family heritage make him valuable, but his alignment with Rollins and The Rock would give him something more dangerous: ideological conviction. He wouldn't be a follower, he'd be a zealot. Another name that fits perfectly into this hierarchy is Austin Theory. WWE has already tested the waters with Theory in various capacities, from cocky mid-carder to Vince McMahon's pet project, but none of those versions stuck with long-term resonance. The issue isn't his talent, it's his purpose. Theory needs a system that validates his arrogance with institutional backing. If Rollins and Rock present themselves as architects of WWE's future, Theory becomes their messenger. He has the look, the promo ability, and the experience to be a middle-tier voice within this faction, trusted enough to lead assaults, but not powerful enough to threaten the hierarchy. Think of him as the sleazy consigliere in a crime syndicate, useful in public and disposable in private. From the female division, and this is how WWE changes forever, by treating Rollins not as a product of their system, but as the architect of its reinvention, by letting The Rock lend not just his presence, but his permanence, by allowing Heyman to whisper poison in every direction while claiming virtue, by using kayfabe not to mask reality, but to mirror it. This isn't just sports entertainment anymore. It's strategic myth-making. It's storytelling with stock options. And it all hinges on the trust WWE places in Seth Rollins, the only man unhinged enough to see the future and fearless enough to build it.